Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is going to be talking about crafting a social media strategy to achieve maximum impact and success. And our speaker is Karen Owens. She has over 25 years' experience in marketing, business development and program management. We have a shared background in telecommunications that we had fun talking about. So would you please join me in welcoming our first speaker for the conference, Karen Owens.
Thanks so much for the introduction, and for any of you who haven't been to an IBAC event, I would definitely recommend it. Some great opportunities to further look at your networking and learn from other comms professionals. So I'm here to talk about the story of Melbourne Water. And before we commence, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd particularly like to acknowledge them as incredible storytellers as well, learning and caring for this land and passing down knowledge from generation to generation with beautiful stories, which is what we're here to do today as well. And I'm also excited to hear and learn from others today as well. Do I need to point somewhere? I did practice that and it still didn't work. So a little bit about Melbourne Water before I sort of go into our strategy and how we use channels. We manage and protect and supply some of the world's best tasting water available in your homes and if you live here in Victoria. Our region reaches from the Upper Yarra right across to Geelong and up to Sunbury. We also manage and treat sewage, recovering and reusing these valued resources. We manage a complex drainage system and work to protect the community from the impacts of flooding. Our teams also work hard to keep all 25,000 kilometres of our rivers and creeks healthy, as well as the land around our rivers and creeks. In addition to these essential services, we are also the state's largest landowner, a fun fact. And in any given year, we deliver over $500 million worth of capital infrastructure projects across Melbourne, which range from quite small ones to really significant ones across Melbourne. It's a big story, we've got a big remit, and while I might get really excited about this, it's actually a hard story to tell. The work is often invisible. You flush the toilet, you turn on the tap, you run along our rivers and creeks, and everything just works until it doesn't. When something fails or we're doing some important maintenance or upgrades, then it's very, very visible and looks like a lot of disruption at a local level, which is probably similar to a lot of other people's experiences and brands here today. It's like I have to click it twice. So our challenge with population growth, the impacts of climate change combined with ageing infrastructure, we're facing some really big challenges. These, along with long-term water security, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, improving the health of our rivers and creeks, and making our cities even a better place to live in a landscape of a cost of living crisis. We need community to understand these challenges and be part of the conversation. For us, this means we need really strong brand awareness and equity. We need to educate and build the community literacy and understand all aspects of water. And this will really drive trust and confidence in our services. So the opportunity for Melbourne Water is to tell one consistent story every time through all of our channels. Look at economies of scale, leveraging millions of communication touch points through our big capital projects that we deliver. Often these projects are really visible, and we've got the opportunity to use that as ad space. Yeah, we're really looking to use all of those channels and drive a really insights-led approach. We know that when people understand more about what we do, which we call water literacy, high levels of water literacy, then they're more willing to accept the disruption and be open to new services because they have a really deep understanding of the work that we do and the benefits that we deliver. So we started quite small in sort of going along this journey, reviewing those high-value opportunities to tell the story through projects. We were able to ramp up our brand positioning and share the vision of the legacy we are leaving using our digital and other channels to do the heavy lifting. So this site here was down at St Kilda, on the main drag there in St Kilda, for those of you that know Melbourne. Really visible site. So yeah, we sort of looked at sort of trying to tell our brand story through those types of opportunities first. I'm going to see if this video works. No. Okay.
Today we're visiting the site of a fantastic project recently completed, the Shakespeare Grove main drain upgrade. It's a really important asset. It protects thousands of properties from flood, and we were able to build this beautiful viewing platform, which means it's not just a drain where you can enjoy some of Port Phillip Bay. It's amazing to see this humble drain now adding to the great lifestyle that people enjoy here in St Kilda.
So, to really elevate our strategy, we also needed to review our brand and start from the top to elevate our channel strategy. So this gives you a bit of a context in terms of what our brand narrative used to be. It's really difficult this narrative was developed in isolation. It was all about us. It was really inwardly focused. It was all about the infrastructure and nothing about the value that we deliver to community. There was no emotional connection, which we know is imperative to grabbing people's attention these days when they've got so much on their mind. And there was no clarity on the breadth of the services that we deliver. It doesn't demonstrate how we're tackling the big issues like climate change and population growth, and it lacks a real vision. These are some of the insights that we used to inform the fact that we needed to update our brand. When we tested our past narrative along with some communication bulletins and some of our social media, results showed that our communications were only connecting with around 31% of the population, and that lined really heavily to those that were already engaged with and were interested in water matters. 10% or fewer associated Melbourne Water with most of our services, and they weren't really aware of the project work that we delivered. So these insights really provided our executives with a burning platform for change and allowed us to refine our approach and create a narrative that would do the heavy lifting to support our channel strategy. It was a really in-depth process that we followed. We started by developing our audience personas, looking really closely at the people across Melbourne that we really wanted to target, understanding their values, their media and social media consumption, their habits, their water use habits, to really understand who we were talking to and how we needed to pitch the message. We worked with an agency, the Shannon Company, who are leaders in behaviour change communications, to conduct interviews with our senior leaders across the business and to do a bit of a desktop review of our current comms. Having completed all this work, we had the building blocks for our overarching narrative. And the really important part of how we developed our narrative was also engaging internally our comms and engagement teams that were going out and communicating with community on everyday projects that we were delivering. So we followed a co-design process internally to build out the final narrative. These were the building blocks. This just shows you the types of themes and the types of things that we deliver across Melbourne Water to help build out the narrative. There were 3 themes that sort of came out when we did this work, and these now form front and centre in our brand positioning: more than water, caring for Melbourne, and planning for the future. These themes really shine through in terms of how we try and position our brand now. This gives you a bit of a look at long-form narrative that we developed, showing everything that we do. We used audience testing really, really deeply to understand what statements would resonate best with community, and it showed the best performing messages for each of our audiences. And you can see here some of the audience tips that we use so that our comms teams know the types of people that will resonate with these messages. Testing was done over 18 months, so it was a long process that we followed to get there. We had baseline, we had qualitative and quantitative testing once we had the long form narrative, and then we started to look at language choices, because internally I think sometimes your people can get really tucked into certain words and certain ways that we should be communicating with our audiences, and so using the testing enabled us to have the proof as to why we needed to use certain, simpler language to communicate with our audiences. This shows the depth of that testing. The agency that we use, they could sort of follow. The technology is amazing these days, but they can see where people are spending their time and where their eyes are hovering over certain statements. And here you can see the phrases that performed the strongest. In Melbourne, water is essential to our way of life. We are in the decade that matters. That's why at Melbourne Water and today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. So we often use these repeatable phrases to get our messages through and to really bring audiences along that journey in a really consistent way, regardless of what channel we're using. And the team still use this data today to help inform our social media campaigns, creative development, and to ensure that we're continuing to be relevant for community. This service portfolio messages, so really working with the comms and engagement teams to co-create the messaging that was going to be used to talk to community about specific projects that we were delivering. And then we have a framework here. So you can see how the project messages come to life using the narrative framework. In Maribyrnong River, the Maribyrnong River main is essential to our way of life. Each day it transports sewage from Melbourne's northwest to the Western Treatment Plant. In recent years, some of the sections have been coming to their end of life. That's why at Melbourne Water we've been upgrading the sewer to ensure safe sewage services for local homes and businesses today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. So we can use that framework when we communicate with community, regardless of whether it's through bulletins, through social media, or through other channels. And then in terms of rolling it out, so, typical of what we do in our businesses, but looking at social media tiles, project bulletins, engagement collateral, and signage guidelines to get that really consistent approach, regardless of what types of channels we're using. And as part of our brand narrative approach, we've also used our managing director as a thought leader to start that storytelling process through our social media channels. I don't, yeah.
Today, we're here at the Western Treatment Plant near Werribee, a really special place that's essential to Melbourne's way of life. Every day, the Western Treatment Plant treats more than half of Melbourne's sewage. It's just awe-inspiring to see the scale of the pipes and the sewers that service Melbourne. More and more people want to call Melbourne home every year. And that's why at Melbourne Water, we manage the sewerage network to keep our city healthy today, tomorrow, and for generations to come.
So you can see how those repeatable phrases, the framework, how we talk about our services comes to life via our managing director. Having her as the talent also means we're really, you know, we've got that leverage. She's across it. She can really advocate for the work that we're doing across the business. So how does this all come together in terms of an approach for social media? Social media strategy, from our perspective, isn't something that could really stand alone. It needs to do the heavy lifting in the digital space, but has to form part of a greater content funnel that we look at how we tell our story through all the channels. And particularly for me, I'm really passionate about ensuring we're continuing to use testing, research and insights to evolve our approach, not just use like a set and forget type scenario. The approach is always evolving depending on the insights that are coming through. So this gives you a bit of an understanding of the channels approach we use and how we sort of take the strategic focus on all of our services. We look at timing aligning to a seasonal lens when people are more likely to be interested in specific services. Aligning to those natural seasons of Melbourne. So for example, right now, we're in the spring campaign, aligning to rivers and creeks. People are out and about a bit more, you know, running and walking and doing all those things. So it's more top of mind for people. The key messages are drawn down from that brand narrative that was co-created, and we also use a lot of the projects that are happening out and about in community as proof points to be able to tell that story. And this just gives you that next level of detail in terms of how we bring together all that channel strategy funnel, looking at you know, that overarching brand message that we want to get through versus specific campaigns for the season, focusing on our greatest backyard, the Yarra River, the Maribyrnong River, those beautiful iconic places that people spend time. Hero media and what we'll be focusing on that, amplifying through channels, ministerial ops, and how we're going to use our projects to bring that story to life. So this is a bit of an example of a project that we delivered out in Spotswood across the other side of in the west. The Hobsons Bay main sewer, it's a critical part of Melbourne's infrastructure, the sewer network. It transports 30% of Melbourne's wastewater to the Western Treatment Plant. The current sewer was built back in the 1960s and is coming to its end of life, which is why we need to upgrade it to have enough capacity for the growing population. The project was also in the heart of the Science Works Museum, which brought its own challenges, having to sort of cordon off a fair amount of the land within the museum to run the project. So it was really essential that we look to lessen the construction impact and the visitor experience. So, what do we have here? Did I go forward 120? No, I didn't. So this really demonstrates how comms engagement and education and partnerships, marketing and brand came together to deliver something greater than we've ever been able to achieve alone, really bringing together all those teams to be able to use our channels to tell the story. Maybe...
Hello there. So you're the kind soul who's going to help me find me teeth.
So we developed in partnership with ScienceWorks an AR experience that we could use. Maybe play the cartoony one, the second video in as well.
Hey there, I'm Lucy, the tunnel boring machine. But there's nothing boring about me. I'm hard at work, deep underground, digging a tunnel for a very important job. We're building Melbourne Water's newest sewer. Over the next few months, I'll be chomping my way through a whopping 17,000 cubic metres of tough rock and soil. That's enough to fill the main building at ScienceWorks 3 times over. My adventure starts at ScienceWorks in Spotswood before I munch and crunch my way 670 metres underground to Port Melbourne. The Super Sewer team is working around the clock to get the job done. We're even going to tunnel under the mighty Yarra River. It's no easy task, but I was literally made for this. So the next time you think of me as just another boring machine, remember that I'm here, making a big impact on building a better future for our communities.
So that just gives you a bit of an example of how it came to life.
We're building it.
There we go. Sorry, a few too many videos there. It was, that project has won about 6 or 7 awards, I think, overall. The signage itself, so you can see we'd cordoned off a lot of the area outdoors that the museum had, so we used it as an opportunity to tell the story in a really fun way. Using really vibrant story, educating the kids on science-related things. They could peep through the hole to look at all the engineering, and then we could use that artwork in other ways as well. We developed a experience that could be run in ScienceWorks called the Super Sewer experience, which we're now able to take to schools and educate kids on the sewer system. It's the first time I've ever seen kids enraptured for 30 minutes to learn about something that they probably never thought of before. So that's probably our best example of how all this comes to life. In terms of, there's some key takeouts there, but I might just pause there to see if there's any questions, but that was really all I was going to cover today. I think from our perspective, the strategy we need to really start with the brand and make sure that brand story was right, to be able to then bring that down and ladder it into a really succinct strategy from a social media perspective, and leverage those really big opportunities through capital works where all the money sits, to amplify our brand and have that opportunity to bring it to life through all of our channels. So, yeah. Any questions? Got a question?
Thank you, Kate.
Okay.
That was great. I'm really impressed to see the research and how that's informed the tactics, and no surprise that you've won so many awards. That's great. So just a reminder, we've got a microphone. We've got a question down the front. If you could just let us know your at least your first name and your organisation before you ask the question, that'd be great.
Sure. Mitchell here from the City of Great Geelong. Thanks for the presentation. Hopefully you can hear me. You talked about social media and the digital landscape as sort of doing the heavy lifting, but it's part of a broader strategy. I'm just wondering how much of your overall strategy is taken up by social media. Is it 50-50, 25-75?
Depends on, I think they work hand in hand, so I wouldn't say one is a greater percentage than the other. I think they all have their role to play. So if we're really specifically delivering something localised in the community, we use that as an opportunity to talk, to smaller groups of people from that perspective. But then social media can be used to take that project as a proof point for why we are doing the work across the whole system from a Melbourne perspective. So it's looking at how those things can work hand in hand rather than one having greater preference than the other, I'd say.
Some more questions?
No. Well, I'll be around if you do have questions.
Hi, Courtney from CFA here. I was just wondering, with the social aspects of it, did you use paid to back some of that content and organic, and what was the performance like on some of those assets that you used?
Yeah, we use both. Mainly paid is done on functional, from a functional perspective. So on project-based things where we really need to speak to community from that perspective. From an outcome perspective, in terms of looking at the research and how it's performing, we use brand tracking as the sort of North Star for how we're performing over time. Over the last year, we've seen our social media engagement increase by about 17%, and awareness of each of the services we track quarterly about 500 people. We've seen a really good uplift in understanding across all of our services through this work over the last 2 years, anywhere between about 7 and 11% uplift in understanding. So although from a tactical perspective, the teams sort of look at individual performance of content to make decisions on what we might do next, but then the bigger piece is, is all of that really leading to better brand outcomes?
Jen, there's one question behind you. Oh, behind you.
Hi, I'm Sarah from Donate Life. I just wondered, since you've done your kind of brand refresh, whether you've measured the impact that's had on brand recognition, or whether that's like coming up and when you kind of plan to do that?
Yeah, we do it quarterly, as I said, so we continue to do it. And through the testing, one of the things we did do is we tested a long form video of the brand through our brand tracking, and through that we got really good outcomes in terms of people understanding better about what we do and how we perform. So we're always testing just to see how it's going and whether we need to make any changes over time.
Thanks, Karen. I'm Liz from the Department of Education. I'm just interested in understanding, you track sort of how people are responding to the things that are going on in their areas. Have you seen a shift in the impact of like in-person engagement and social media engagement, like whether the two of those, which has more impact?
Social, we can reach more people more quickly. I think the in-person engagement we use for very specific project outcomes that we're trying to deliver. So we try and balance both aspects of those, both sides of that coin, I guess you could say, depending on what we're trying to drive and whether we need to really deeply engage through, like for example, our prices. We go through a price period with the Essential Services Commission. We need to run formal committees, community committees to engage in what we do in that perspective. So it really depends on the project in terms of which way we go.
Any last questions? Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there. Karen, that was fascinating. As I said, I really, really liked the example of how you used research to keep your brand message, really aligned with your strategy and your tactics. So it was fantastic. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Karen Owens.